I'm just about to cross the street when the pedestrian light starts flashing. I hesitate, unsure whether to make a run for it. Wendy Sherman, my girlfriend, and Sawyer Young, my close friend, have already crossed to the other side. I'm the only one left behind after the pedestrian light changes to red. They reach the other side of the street without looking back at me once. A black car speeds past, splashing mud onto my pant legs before I finally react and take a step back. I have always been a little slow ever since childhood. I'm the last one to finish my meal, and the one walking behind everyone else. Wendy and Sawyer worried I would fall behind in my studies, so one explains the questions to me while the other takes notes for me. They eventually end up leaning close together, arguing for the rest of the afternoon about geometric auxiliary lines. I remain sitting beside them, unable to get a word in. They insist on coming along to help me screen places when I go apartment hunting. They both grab a brochure from the real estate agent and walk together, talking about commute times and how much natural light the apartments get. Sawyer casually reaches over and helps Wendy carry her handbag. Wendy glances up at him, smiling and joking as they walk along. I end up as the one constantly trailing behind, watching their backs. That's when I suddenly get it. Only people who move at the same pace can cross on the same green light, and the ones moving a beat too slow have to wait for the next light by themselves. I step forward and walk onto the crosswalk as the pedestrian light turns green. If I can't keep pace with them, I'll walk on my own from here on out. Fabian's POV. I had just reached the entrance when I noticed that Wendy Sherman, my girlfriend, and Sawyer Young, my friend, were already looking around the apartment. Wendy looked at me and asked impatiently, "What took you so long, Fabian?" Sawyer and I are almost done looking around. If you'd taken any longer, the real estate agent would have called it a day. Sawyer stuck his head out of the kitchen, then quickly went over to Wendy and patted her on the shoulder. "Oh, stop being so hard on Fabian, Wendy. He's always been a slow walker, so you should be a bit more patient with him." I lowered my head and glanced at the mud stains on my pants. "You guys walk too fast." Sawyer laughed it off and pointed toward the balcony outside. "You've made it anyway, so it's no big deal. Do you see that balcony out there? It'd be perfect for growing lisianthus. It'd look great in photos." Wendy looked in the direction he was pointing and chuckled. "It's not easy keeping lisianthus alive, and with your short attention span, they wouldn't last a week. It'd be better to plant mint. At least we can use it to make cocktails." "Who says I can't keep them alive? I'm definitely planting those lisianthus. You can do whatever you want, just don't expect me to replant them for you when they wither." Wendy and Sawyer started bickering back and forth. Their tone held a familiar closeness, much like a young couple picking out things for a new home. I was clearly the one renting the apartment and paying for the rent, yet they had already gone over my head, deciding what the balcony would become, and even making plans to live here. I stared at the bare concrete space, and suddenly lost the desire to plant anything there. I merely felt a bitter sense of neglect surging through my entire being. I remembered once telling Wendy that I could never join in whenever they were talking. Wendy was staring at her phone at that moment, not even bothering to look up. "You're the one who stays quiet and refuses to talk. How is anyone supposed to know what's going on with you, Fabian?" I suddenly took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I think cacti are pretty nice too." I tried to sound more upbeat, asking, "Do you know why the cactus broke up with its girlfriend?" I paused briefly before continuing. "It's because the relationship was getting too prickly." I told them a dad joke I had found in an old magazine yesterday. Yet the moment I finished, the chatter around me disappeared, leaving only silence. I thought maybe I was too slow to keep up, so even my jokes were out of date. Sawyer was the first to respond after 5 seconds. He suddenly snorted, breaking the silence. "Your joke just gave me the chills, Fabian, the cringy kind." He then turned to Wendy and said, "It feels even chillier than the time you fell into that snowbank while we were skiing in Islavia, Wendy." Upon hearing that, Wendy's eyes lit up again. "You were the one who dragged me off-piste in the first place. I was the one who eventually had to dig you out of the snow back then. Your whole head was covered in so much snow that you looked a decade older back then. You'd better not expect me to marry you if you end up single and old, Wendy." They laughed completely unabashedly. Wendy had promised me that we'd go see the auroras in Islavia after graduation. She then said we should wait until she had settled into her job before telling me that we should do it when she had some time off. I kept waiting for her, only for her to end up going with Sawyer. "When did you two go to Islavia?" Their laughter came to a sudden halt. Wendy's expression became subdued as she replied indifferently, "Sawyer and I went last winter. You were away on a shoot at the time." I couldn't help but wonder if I just happened to be away on a shoot, or if they had deliberately chosen to go while I was gone. Sawyer waved his hand to brush it off. "It's all in the past now, so let's just get back to looking at the apartment." They both tacitly agreed to drop the topic. I couldn't bear to stand there any longer as my mud-soaked pants clung against my skin. "I'm not feeling so well. I'm going to head home first, so we'll discuss the apartment another time." I had just walked out when I heard Wendy's hushed voice coming from behind me. "What's with the attitude now? He's really spoiled rotten. I returned home alone, put on my slippers, walked over to the bathroom, and used wet wipes to slowly clean off the dried mud stains on my pants. I didn't even notice when the motion sensor light flickered on and off. I only snapped out of it when the water spilled over the edge of the sink and dripped onto my foot. I slowly reached out to turn off the faucet. I was always a bit slow on the uptake. I wasn't born like that, though. I was 7 years old when Wendy had insisted on dragging me out into the rain for 2 hours just to catch frogs. I had a high fever for the whole day, almost frying my brain. I eventually suffered from delayed reflexes and processing ever since that day. Luna Chadwick, my sister, was so enraged that she wanted to beat Wendy up right there and then. Wendy knelt beside my bed back then, tears streaming down her face. "You can hit me if you want to, Luna. I know it's all my fault. Please don't take Fabian away with you. I swear I'll make it up to him for the rest of my life, and I'll never let him suffer even a bit of hardship, Luna." I believed her, and Luna believed her, too. That was why Luna took over the overseas business operations, relocated abroad long-term, and left me with Wendy's family. Wendy genuinely looked after me in the very beginning. I had longer hair back then, and when I finished washing my hair and struggled to hold the hairdryer, she'd always take it from me. She'd run her fingers through my hair, keeping the temperature of the hairdryer just right, and say, "It doesn't matter if you're a bit slow, Fabian. I'll always have time to wait for you." Wendy eventually ran out of patience. Just a few days ago, after I finished washing my hair, water dripped onto the floor. She didn't fetch the hairdryer this time, opting to just throw a dry towel over to me. She scowled with a look of annoyance, something she probably didn't even realize herself. "You're already 23 years old, Fabian, not 3. Why don't you learn from Sawyer and become more independent?" He carried a bucket of water up 6 flights of stairs by himself the other day and didn't even complain once. "You can't keep relying on me forever. You should go live on your own for a while and learn how to take care of yourself." I realized then that time would eventually wear away all patience, and that the person who promised to dedicate the rest of her life to me now felt I was just in her way. It was the reason why I went apartment hunting today. I dried my hands, walked to the couch in the living room, and sat down. I then took my camera out of my bag. It was one of the few things I could take with me, and it was also what I used for my work. I scrolled through the camera and hit the playback button, the screen glowing softly as I looked through the photos one at a time. I was the one who had taken all the photos. The shot was well framed, and the lighting was spot on. It was just that the subject of every photo was identical. Wendy and Sawyer were laughing in front of the cafe's floor-to-ceiling window. Wendy and Sawyer were sharing a toast by the campfire at the campsite. Sawyer was casually brushing away the stray hair in front of Wendy's eyes. I noticed there were more than 300 photos on the camera, and I was the person who was always left behind the lens, never appearing in any of them. I never appeared in any of the photos, so naturally there was no place for me in her future either. Wendy didn't return until late afternoon. She tossed her car keys onto the table by the door, the metal making a sharp clinking sound. "What are you even making a fuss about, Fabian?" She walked up to me, her brow furrowed deeply. "Sawyer pulled strings through 3 different people and ran around for 4 afternoons just to pick out a place for you. What else could you possibly be unhappy with? How could you just walk away earlier? Do you realize how embarrassing that was for Sawyer?" I stated slowly, "I have no issue with the place." Wendy asked, "What's with the attitude if you don't have a problem with it? Sawyer practically ran himself ragged trying to help you. He felt so bad after you walked out like that he spent the whole afternoon blaming himself and skipped his lunch entirely." Wendy actually rushed home to confront me just because Sawyer skipped lunch. I had acute gastroenteritis and was doubled over on the couch from the pain last month, but she only sent me a simple message. "You should just drink plenty of water. I'll be having dinner with a client tonight, so you should order your medicine through delivery yourself." I pressed the delete button and erased every photo on the camera. I then said, "I just feel like he wasn't looking for a place for my sake." Wendy scoffed. "You can't just assume the worst about people, Fabian. You think everyone is like you, staying shut inside all day making a fuss over nothing? I made a reservation for lunch tomorrow. You're going to apologize to him, and we'll put this behind us." I stared at her for a couple of seconds, finding it incredulous that my own girlfriend was blaming me for not being considerate of another man's feelings. "Let's break up, Wendy." Wendy's expression shifted slightly. She looked stunned before putting on a mocking look. "You want to break up with me? Do you think you can scare me just by saying that, Fabian? How could you possibly live without me, especially with those delayed reflexes of yours?" I stated flatly, "I'm not trying to scare you, Wendy." Wendy turned away and threw her handbag onto the couch. "That's enough, Fabian. Stop throwing a fit. I'll send you the details for tomorrow's lunch spot later, so make sure to be there on time." She walked straight into the bathroom without turning around, and before long, the sound of running water echoed from within. She had completely tuned out everything I said through the frosted glass door. I still went to the restaurant the following afternoon. Sawyer had genuinely put a lot of effort into helping me find a place, after all, and my upbringing had dictated that I had to thank him for it. Wendy and Sawyer had already arrived when I pushed open the door to the private room. They were sitting next to each other on one side of the long table, leaning together as they looked at a phone screen, laughing over whatever they were talking about. There was something oddly deliberate about the way 3 seats were arranged. Wendy and Sawyer sat side by side, their shoulders nearly brushing, while I had no choice but to pull out the single chair across from them, feeling like an out-of-place spectator. "You're finally here, Fabian." Sawyer instantly flashed a wide grin. "Wendy thought you might still be mad and not show up. What's there to apologize for anyway? We're all friends here. It's no big deal, so just laugh it off and move on." I merely said, "Thank you." I glanced at the table. Wendy and Sawyer both had ice-shaken lemonades sitting in front of them, while the space in front of me was completely empty. Wendy would always order a warm drink for me first whenever we ate together in the past. She knew I had a sensitive stomach and couldn't drink anything cold. She didn't even bother doing that for me at this moment. "I'll go get something to drink." I walked over to the counter and ordered a cup of hot milk. I turned around and walked back toward the private room while they prepared my drink. It was then that a server, carrying a hot casserole dish, came rushing over. "Be careful." I heard the server's warning, but I was always a bit slow to react. I managed to pull my foot back a little, but the boiling soup had already splashed onto me. More than half the contents landed on my lower leg and the top of my foot. I instantly felt a sharp pain searing my skin, leaving my mind completely blank as I stood there paralyzed. Just then, Wendy and Sawyer stepped out as the private room door opened. She didn't rush over to help me. She snickered instead. "When are you ever going to fix those delayed reflexes of yours, Fabian? How do you not know to get out of the way when someone that big is walking toward you?" Sawyer stood beside her and laughed along. "You're way too slow, Fabian. If that had been me, I would have dodged it right away. Your reflexes are slower than a sloth's." Wendy chimed in saying, "If he was half as quick as you are, I wouldn't have to worry about him all the time." In the meantime, a horrifying red swelling began to spread across my leg as a searing pain spread through me, as if drilling deep into my bones. I suddenly recalled what happened during high school. I fell during PE and scraped my knee. It was only a small wound, and there wasn't much blood, but Wendy got to me faster than the teacher did, helped me up, and lectured me in the infirmary. "You can't even take a few steps without getting yourself hurt. What would you do if I weren't around?" Wendy was shaking so much back then that she could barely hold onto the cotton swab. Sawyer patted my shoulder back then, too, telling me he'd keep an eye on me whenever I went for a run. Yet at this moment, as they looked at the blisters forming on my leg, they just found my clumsiness hilarious. I looked up, meeting their gaze. "Is this funny to you?" Wendy's smile faltered slightly. "It was just a joke. Is it really necessary to make such a big deal out of it?" Sawyer chimed in from the side saying, "I was just trying to ease the atmosphere, Fabian, so please don't take it the wrong way. I've burned myself while cooking before too. I just put some ointment on it and it was good to go. It's really not a huge deal, Fabian." Wendy sounded completely impatient. "Did you hear that, Fabian? Go to the restroom and run some cold water over it. Don't just stand there like an eyesore." I took a cab to the hospital by myself, and after getting my wound treated, I sent a message to Luna. "Does the offer you made earlier about me helping you out at Luznia still stand, Luna?" Luna replied almost instantly, "Of course it does. I've even set aside a room for you, Fabian. Did Wendy give you a hard time?" I sniffled and replied, "I just suddenly realized how much I missed you, Luna." I returned to the apartment and packed my luggage. I suddenly noticed that the dry box that had been sitting in the corner for years was now empty. It held the keepsake Mom left me, a long out-of-print roll of Kodak film that marked the start of my dream as a photographer. Wendy opened the door, her brow furrowing deeply when she noticed my calf wrapped in bandages. "What's going on here? Why are you wrapped up like that?" She reached out and pinched my ankle gently. "You should pay more attention when you walk next time. I'll accompany you to Islavia to watch the auroras with you once things slow down for me at work, so quit sulking all the time like the world owes you a favor." I pulled my leg away and asked, "What did you do with my film roll?" Wendy froze for a moment, then stood up and fished a dented metal casing out of her pocket. "You treated it like such a treasure that Sawyer and I decided to hide it from you. You see, the plan was to give it back as a surprise after you got all anxious searching for it. It turns out that the roll of film was way too old. Sawyer accidentally snapped the film when he took it out for a look." I opened the lid with trembling hands and noticed that the film had been pulled out entirely, overexposing it, and even snapped in two in the middle. It was the last bit of visual memory Mom had left behind for me. I used to take it out and look at it over and over again whenever I couldn't sleep at night, reliving those memories and missing her endlessly. I could hear the tremor in my voice as I asked, "Do you know how precious this is to me, Wendy?" "I know, but Sawyer didn't do it on purpose," Wendy replied as she pulled 2 brand new, discontinued rolls of film from the bottom of her shopping bag and pushed them toward me. "How can a roll of film matter more than Sawyer and me anyway? I spent a lot of money getting 2 new roles to make it up to you, Fabian. I instantly raised my hand and slapped her hard across the face. Wendy's head was knocked sideways by the impact. She was completely stunned by my action. I accidentally misplaced a lens cap that was worth only a few $dozen when I was 17 years old, but Wendy actually took a flashlight and combed through the whole school field just to find it. She said, "If it belongs to you, then even the smallest thing matters, Fabian." Yet, at this moment, Wendy had personally destroyed the very thing I cherished the most. Wendy slowly turned to look at me and grabbed my wrist. "Have you lost your mind, Fabian?" She then firmly pulled me into her embrace. I bellowed, "Let go of me." Wendy tightened her arms around me, wrapping me in a tight embrace. "Please just cut it out already, Fabian. That roll of film is already a thing in the past. You have to move on from it. Do you get it, Fabian?" I stopped struggling and simply let her hug me. I was crying so hard that my tears completely soaked her clothes. I was well aware that I should move on from the things in the past, including Wendy herself. I didn't make a sound as I cried, tears involuntarily streaming down my face. I cried until there were no more tears left, and until the pain in my chest finally subsided. Wendy kept stroking my back throughout the whole situation. She gradually released me once she noticed that I had relaxed. She then said softly, "You still have me by your side, Fabian." I ignored her, turned away, and walked into the bedroom to pack my luggage. Wendy came after me and asked coldly, "What are you doing, Fabian?" "I'm packing my belongings." "You're pulling the running away act again? You said I should learn to be independent like Sawyer, so I'm moving into the new apartment tomorrow." Wendy hesitated slightly. After all, she had been the one who told me to move out in the first place. She remained silent for a moment before saying, "I'll sleep with you tonight then. It's going to be the last night we're spending together, after all." It had been quite a while since we last slept in the same bed. Wendy claimed my sleeping habits were too different, and that my tossing and turning at night would affect her work the next day. She said, "You need to learn how to be independent, Fabian. You can't act like a child who needs someone beside him just to fall asleep." I eventually moved into the guest room and slept there for the next 6 months. I didn't object to her suggestion, so later that night, Wendy reached from behind and wrapped her arms around my waist. I lay awake in the darkness, looking at the neon lights beyond the floor-to-ceiling window. "Are you really going to be happy if I truly learned how to stand on my own, Wendy?" Wendy replied without hesitation, sounding completely at ease. "Of course, Fabian. I'd be more than happy." She still tightened her arms around my waist after saying that, though. I got dressed the following morning and wheeled my suitcase over to the foyer. Wendy threw on her coat, walked up to me, and reached for my suitcase. "I'll help you with the moving, Fabian." She hadn't even reached the handle when the phone in her pocket started ringing. Sawyer was the one calling, sounding extremely thrilled. "I managed to get 2 tickets for the sci-fi movie that's premiering today, Wendy. Hurry and come watch it with me." That was the movie we had planned to watch together 3 months ago. Wendy glanced at me before accepting Sawyer's invitation. She then hurried out the door after hanging up. "You can just take a cab and move in on your own first, Fabian. I'll watch the movie with Sawyer and bring him over to your new apartment later." "Got it." I took the cab to the airport once Wendy left. I called Luna while I was on the way saying, "Remember to come pick me up at the airport, Luna." Luna's amused voice came from the other end of the line. "You have nothing to worry about, Fabian. Have I ever forgotten anything when it came to you?" The flight from my hometown to Luznia took 14 hours. I turned my phone off before the plane took off. As the cabin pressure shifted, and the roar of the engines filled my ears, I leaned my head against the cold window, watching the city below shrink into a cluster of tiny, indifferent lights. In my lap sat my camera bag, light and stripped down to the bare essentials. 2 lenses, a body, and my passport. Everything else, the clothes Wendy had chosen. For me because they matched Sawyer's style, the shoes she bought me that pinched my toes because I walked too slowly to complain, was left behind in the trash bins outside the apartment. While I was crossing the clouds at 10,000 meters, Wendy was sitting in a dimly lit movie theater 3 rows from the screen. Sawyer leaned over, passing her a bucket of extra butter popcorn. "They really went all out with the CGI in this one, didn't they? Hey, Wendy, look at that. Alien. Doesn't it look a little like Fabian when he's trying to process a joke?" In the past, Wendy would have laughed instantly, chiming in with a witty remark. This time, her hand paused over the popcorn bucket. She stared at the glowing screen, but her mind felt inexplicably restless. "What's wrong?" Sawyer asked, picking up his drink. "You've been staring at your phone every 5 minutes. Is there a problem with the company project?" "No," Wendy murmured, frowning as she pulled up her WeChat again. "There was no message from me. Usually, whenever I moved or took a cab by myself, I would send her a message the moment I arrived, partly out of habit, and partly because she used to demand I log my whereabouts so she wouldn't have to worry about my slow brain getting lost." Fabian, 12:15 p.m. Got it. That was the last text he sent her before she left with Sawyer. He's probably still organizing his luggage, Sawyer said casually, stretching his legs over the seat in front of him. You know how Fabian is. It takes him 20 minutes just to fold a sweater. He's probably sitting on the floor right now, staring at a cardboard box, wondering where the packing tape goes. Wendy forced a small smile, but the irritation in her chest didn't fade. He's just throwing another silent tantrum because I came out with you. He'll get over it by dinner. When he realizes he doesn't even know how to set up the Wi-Fi router by himself, he'll call me. The movie finished 2 hours later. They walked out into the bright afternoon sun of the mall. Sawyer wanted to buy a pair of limited edition sneakers, so Wendy accompanied him into the store, paying for them with her card before he even pulled out his wallet. I'll pay you back when my commission comes through next month, Sawyer said, with an easy, charming smile, slinging his arm around her shoulder. You're the best, Wendy. What would I do without you? Wendy looked at her phone screen again. Still nothing. By 5 p.m., the silence had stretched past her patience threshold. She pulled out her car keys, her tone sharp. Come on. Let's go to Fabian's new apartment. He's been quiet all day, and I don't feel like dealing with his silent treatment. When I go home tonight. Sure, Sawyer chuckled, hopping into the passenger seat. Let's see how much of a mess he made setting up the place. They drove to the residential complex Sawyer had picked out, the one with the high floor and the concrete balcony meant for Mint and Lysianthus. They took the elevator to the 12th floor. Wendy stood in front of Unit 1204, pressing the doorbell 3 times. No one answered. Did he fall asleep? Sawyer leaned against the wall, tapping the lock. Or maybe his delayed reflexes haven't registered the bell yet. Wendy pulled out the key the real estate agent had given her. She unlocked the door and pushed it open. The apartment was pitch black. The smell of fresh paint and raw concrete wafted out. There was no luggage in the hallway, no shoes by the door, no Wi-Fi router on the floor. The bare concrete space was entirely empty, exactly as they had left it 2 days ago. Wendy stood in the doorway, a strange, cold knot tightening in her stomach. Immediately called the real estate agent. Mr. Zhang, this is Wendy Sherman. Did Fabian Myers come by today to pick up the secondary keys for Unit 1204? The agent's voice came through the speaker, sounding confused. Miss Sherman? Didn't Mr. Myers tell you? He came by yesterday morning at 8 a.m. and officially canceled the rental agreement. Wendy froze. He canceled it? Yes, the agent sighed. He paid the full 2-month security deposit as a cancellation penalty without saying a word. He just signed the termination form, took his receipt, and left. The phone slid an inch down Wendy's palm before she gripped it tighter. He canceled the lease? Where did he go? I have no idea, Miss Sherman. He didn't say. Wendy hung up. She turned slowly to look at Sawyer, who was standing in the empty hallway, holding his new sneaker box. He didn't move in, Wendy whispered, her voice faltering for the very first time. Sawyer frowned, though he quickly brushed it off with a scoff. Where else could he go? He doesn't have any other friends in this city. He's probably back at your apartment, sitting on the couch waiting for you to go home and apologize. Right, Wendy muttered, though her fingers were cold as she pressed the elevator button. He's just making a scene. He has nowhere else to go. They rushed back to the old apartment. Wendy slammed the front door open, stepping inside. Fabian. Silence greeted her. The apartment was cool and quiet, smelling faintly of the sandalwood soap I always used. Fabian, stop hiding. Wendy called out, walking briskly toward the master bedroom. She pushed the door open. The bed was made with meticulous precision, the gray duvet tucked in at the corners, the pillows aligned. She opened the closet. My side of the wardrobe was completely bare. The 3 plain linen shirts I wore every summer were gone. My heavy winter coat was gone. The white sneakers she had insulted were gone. Even the small wooden nightstand beside the bed, the one where I kept my camera, lenses, lens wipes, and darkroom notebook, was completely cleared out. Sawyer walked into the bedroom behind her, looking around with a furrowed brow. Did he actually pack everything? Where did he get the energy to do all this so fast? Wendy didn't answer. She rushed to the guest room, the room I had slept in for the last 6 months. The bed there was stripped of its sheets. The desk was empty, save for one single item sitting squarely in the middle of the dark wood. It was a small white envelope. Wendy stepped forward, her hands shaking slightly as she picked it up. Inside was a house key, the key to her apartment that she had given me 3 years ago, and a piece of paper. It was a copy of our bank account statement. I had transferred every single cent of the living expenses she had ever deposited into my account back to her, along with an extra 50,000 yuan. On the margin of the statement, written in my slow, precise handwriting, were 6 words. We are clear. Do not look. What is this? Sawyer leaned in, reading the paper over her shoulder. He let Out a dry, incredulous laugh. Is he seriously trying to break up over a broken roll of film? How childish can he get? He's 23 years old. Wendy stared at the 6 words. For the past 16 years, no matter how harsh she was, no matter how many times she left me behind at crosswalks, I had always been there when she turned around. I was the slow, steady presence in her life, the one who couldn't run away even if he wanted to, because his legs and brain were too slow. She pulled out her phone and dialed my number. The subscriber you have dialed is powered off or outside the coverage area. She dialed again. The subscriber you have dialed is powered off. She opened WeChat and sent a message. A red exclamation point appeared immediately. I had blocked her number. I had deleted her account. He blocked me? Wendy's voice trembled, a mix of anger and disbelief. Actually blocked me. Try calling his sister, Sawyer suggested, his tone losing some of its easy composure. Luna. She's the only one he ever listens to besides you. Wendy immediately found Luna's number, a contact she hadn't dialed in over 4 years, and pressed call. It rang 3 times before a cool, calm female voice answered from the other side of the world. Wendy. Luna. Wendy blurted out, her tone rushed and defensive. Is Fabian with you? Did he call you? He's acting completely insane. He canceled his lease, moved all his things out of my apartment, and blocked my number. Tell him to stop throwing a tantrum and call me back right now. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Luna spoke again, her voice was as cold and sharp as an Arctic blade. He's on a plane to Lusnia, Wendy. Wendy froze. What? He boarded flight CA-891 2 hours ago, Luna said smoothly. His plane is currently over the Pacific Ocean. He will be landing in Lusnia tomorrow morning, and he will be living with me from now on. Lusnia. Wendy gasped, her face draining of color. Why would he go to Lusnia? He doesn't speak the language. He has delayed reflexes, he can't live abroad. Tell him to turn around. He doesn't need to speak the language, Luna replied, her voice dropping an octave, heavy with a fury she had suppressed for years. He has a sister who loves him, who respects his pace, and who will never leave him standing alone at a red light while she runs off with another man. Wendy's breath hitched. Luna, listen to me, it's a misunderstanding. 16 years ago, Luna cut her off mercilessly. You dragged my 7-year-old brother into the pouring rain for 2 hours to catch frogs. You gave him a high fever that nearly destroyed his nervous system. You knelt beside his bed, crying, promising me that you would spend the rest of your life protecting him and waiting for him. Luna let out a soft, bitter laugh over the receiver. I trusted you, Wendy. I left my brother in your care so I could build a life overseas. And what did you do? You let him burn his leg on boiling soup while you laughed. You let your friend break the only heirloom his dead mother left him. You treated him like a piece of baggage you couldn't wait to dump on the curb. I didn't. Wendy yelled, tears spilling over her eyes. I bought him 2 new rolls of film. I took care of him. He doesn't want your new film, Wendy, Luna said flatly. And he doesn't want you. If you ever try to contact him again, or if you ever set foot in Lusnia, I will personally ensure your family's trade logistics firm loses every single European contract my company manages. Click. The line went dead. Wendy stood in the empty guest room, the phone pressed against her ear, hearing only the rhythmic, hollow hum of the disconnection tone. Beside her, Sawyer stared at her, his face pale. She said he's going to Lusnia permanently? Wendy slowly lowered her phone. She looked at the empty desk, at the dark wood, where my darkroom notebook used to sit, and at the small metal casing of the broken Kodak film sitting in the trash bin nearby. For the first time in 16 years, the absolute, terrifying quiet of the apartment pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. When the plane landed at Lusnia International Airport, the sun was just beginning to rise over the snow-capped mountains in the distance. I stepped out of the gate, carrying my camera bag. The air in Lusnia was crisp, clean, and smelled of pine needles and cold rain. Standing right outside the customs exit was a tall, elegant woman wrapped in a camel hair trench coat. Her dark hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and her eyes were bright with tears. Fabian. Luna didn't care about the onlookers. She dropped her handbag and rushed forward, pulling me into a tight, warm embrace. In the past, whenever Wendy hugged me, she always seemed to be in a hurry, her arms tense, her feet shifting, ready to drag me along to the next place. Luna held me firmly, resting her chin on my shoulder, letting out a long, shaky breath. You're home, little brother, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You're safe now. I buried my face in her shoulder, feeling the familiar, warm scent of the lavender perfume she had worn since we were kids. For the first time in months, the tight, burning ache in my chest slowly dissolved. I'm sorry, Luna, I murmured, my voice raspy. I took so long. Don't ever say that. Luna pulled back, framing my face with her warm hands, examining my tired eyes, the pale skin on my cheeks, and the faint bandage still wrapped around my calf beneath my pants. You came at your own pace. That's all that matters. She took my heavy camera bag from my shoulder, despite my quiet protests, and held my hand as we walked toward the airport exit. She didn't walk fast. She matched her steps to mine, step for step, slow and steady, through the bustling terminal. Outside, a black sedan was waiting. Luna opened the passenger door for me, settling me into the leather seat before driving us toward the city center. Luznia was a beautiful, ancient European city with cobbled streets, stone archways, and tram lines running through wide avenues. Luna brought me to a spacious, light-filled apartment overlooking a historic plaza. The interior was decorated with warm oak furniture, deep green velvet sofas, and soft yellow lamps. This is your room. Luna pushed open a door at the end of the hallway. I froze in the doorway. The room was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows looking out onto a quiet garden terrace. In the corner sat a brand-new, professional-grade darkroom setup, complete with red safe lights, chemical trays, an enlarger, and rows of pristine film drying racks. On the desk lay a thick, leather-bound album and a brand-new set of professional German lenses. I remembered you said you wanted to try silver halide printing 3 years ago, Luna said softly, leaning against the doorframe with a gentle smile. No. One will rush you here, Fabian. You can take 3 hours to develop a single frame if you want. You can take all day. I walked over to the desk, running my fingers over the smooth brass casing of the enlarger. In Wendy's apartment, my darkroom gear had been crammed into a damp, dark corner of the laundry room. Whenever I spent more than an hour developing prints, Wendy would knock impatiently on the door, complaining about the chemical smell or telling me to hurry up and make dinner. Here, my passion wasn't an annoyance. It was respected. Thank you, Luna, I said, turning to look at her, my eyes stinging. Luna walked over, gently smoothing down my hair, just as she used to do when I was 7 years old, before she left for college. Rest today, she said softly. Tomorrow I'll introduce you to Monsieur Laurent. He runs the gallery downstairs. He's been looking for a photographer who knows how to capture quiet light. Back in our hometown, 3 weeks passed. The rainy season had arrived, coating the city streets in a persistent, dreary mist. In the past, rainy days were the times when Wendy stayed home the most. I would make a pot of hot ginger tea, chop up ingredients for chicken stew, and set the table while she worked on her laptop in the living room. When the food was ready, I'd call her twice because the first time, my voice was often too quiet, and she'd come sit down, eating while complaining about her boss. Now the apartment was dead silent. Wendy sat on the couch, staring at the empty coffee table. There was no ginger. No chicken stew. The kitchen counters were dusty, covered in takeout containers and half-empty coffee cups from the delivery place down the street. The front door unlocked, and Sawyer walked in carrying a bag of groceries. I bought some ribeye steaks, Sawyer said cheerfully, kicking off his shoes. Let me cook dinner tonight. You've been looking so pale lately, Wendy. Wendy didn't move. She barely lifted her eyes. Sawyer, why are you here again? Sawyer paused, looking surprised. I came to keep you company. You've been down ever since Fabian left. I figured you needed someone around. I don't need company, Wendy said, her tone flat. I need to work. Come on, Wendy. Sawyer walked over, sitting down beside her on the couch, leaning in close just as he used to do. He's just acting out. Give him another month in Luznia. When he realizes how hard it is to live abroad without someone taking care of him, he'll come crawling back to you. You know he can't survive on his own. In the past, whenever Sawyer said things like this, Wendy would laugh along, agreeing that I was too dependent. Now listening to his cheerful, smooth voice, a sudden wave of irritation flared in her chest. She looked at Sawyer's face, his confident grin, his easy posture, the way he naturally made himself at home on her couch. He didn't crawl back, Wendy said coldly. It's been 22 days. He hasn't sent a single email. He hasn't called his mother. He transferred every cent I ever gave him back to my account. He's just being stubborn. Sawyer, Wendy interrupted, her voice sharp. When you broke that roll of film 3 weeks ago, why didn't you apologize to him? Sawyer blinked, taken aback. What? That old film? I told you it was an accident. I didn't know it was that important to him. You knew, Wendy said, her eyes narrowing as memories she had previously ignored suddenly resurfaced with brutal clarity. He kept that film box on his desk for 5 years. You saw him look at it every time you came over. You knew it was the last thing his mother left him. Sawyer's smile vanished, replaced by an annoyed frown. Are you seriously blaming me now, Wendy? You were the one who agreed to hide it from him. You Laughed when I pulled it out. Wendy froze. The words hit her like a bucket of ice water. She had laughed. She remembered standing in the living room while Sawyer pulled the film out of its casing, watching the brown strip snap in half. She remembered thinking it was just a harmless prank to teach me a lesson for being too sensitive. She remembered the look in my eyes when I opened the metal lid, not anger, not rage, but a deep, hollow despair that had rendered me completely silent before I raised my hand and slapped her. Get out, Wendy whispered. Sawyer stared at her. What? Get out of my apartment, Sawyer. Wendy stood up, her voice trembling with a rage that was directed as much at herself as it was at him. Don't come back. Here. Wendy, are you crazy? Sawyer stood up, his face flushing with embarrassment. I've been running around helping you for 3 weeks. I took care of you while Fabian ran off to Europe. And now you're kicking me out over a dead guy's souvenir. He's not dead. Wendy screamed, grabbing a ceramic vase off the table and shattering it against the floor at his feet. Fabian is not dead. Get out. Sawyer backed away in shock, looking at her as if she had lost her mind. Grabbed his coat, muttered a curse under his breath, and slammed the door shut. Behind him, the apartment fell silent once more. Wendy dropped to her knees amidst the shattered ceramic pieces on the floor. She looked at her trembling hands, then at the empty hallway leading to the guest room. There was no one to bring her a warm towel. No one to clean up the mess. No one to quietly sit beside her and listen to her breathe. She buried her face in her knees and cried into the empty dark. 6 months passed in Luznia. The city shifted from autumn to winter, blanketing the cobblestone plazas in soft, powdery snow. My life had settled into a gentle, rhythmic flow. Every morning at 8 a.m. I woke up, brewed a cup of black tea, and walked down the stone stairs to the Laurent Fine Art Gallery on the ground floor. Monsieur Laurent, a silver-haired French artist with a warm smile, had given me total freedom over the gallery's photography section. I spent my days in the darkroom, developing medium-format film I shot around the city, capturing the quiet morning light hitting the ancient stone bridges, the steam rising from local coffee shops, and the slow, deliberate movements of street musicians in the snow. My delayed reflexes, which had been treated as a defect for 16 years in my hometown, turned out to be an asset in analog photography. Where other photographers rushed to take 30 digital shots a second, I waited. I stood behind my tripod for 40 minutes, watching the light shift across a wall, waiting for the exact second when the atmosphere reached perfection before pressing the shutter once. In November, Monsieur Laurent organized my first solo exhibition. The exhibition was titled, The Pace of Light. 30 silver gelatin prints hung along the gallery's white stone walls, lit by soft halogen spotlights. On opening night, the gallery was packed with art collectors, local critics, and university students. People stood quietly in front of my photos, speaking in low, respectful tones. Look at the depth in this shadow, a prominent French critic remarked, pointing at a shot of an old tram turning a corner in the rain. The photographer didn't rush the exposure. He allowed the darkness to breathe. It's magnificent. I stood in the corner of the gallery, wearing a charcoal wool suit Luna had tailored for me, holding a glass of sparkling water. Luna walked over, slipping her arm through mine, her face glowing with pride. The director of the National Art Center just bought 3 prints from the series Fabian. They want to include your work in their permanent collection. I smiled, a warm, genuine feeling spreading through my chest. Thank you, Luna, for everything. You did this yourself, little brother, Luna said gently, tapping my nose. You just needed the right green light. Just then, the glass doors at the front of the gallery pushed open. A cold draft of winter air rushed into the warm room, accompanied by the chiming of the entrance bell. A woman walked in. She wore a heavy black coat, her hair damp from the falling snow outside. Her face was pale, thin, and worn, with dark circles under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. She looked around the gallery frantically, her eyes darting past the crowd until they landed directly on me. It was Wendy. The chatter in the gallery seemed to fade into a distant hum. Wendy stood by the door, her hands trembling as she pulled off her gloves. She stared at me across the room. At my tailored suit, my neat hair, the quiet confidence in my posture, and the gentle smile that had vanished from my face. The moment I saw her, she took 3 ragged steps forward, her boots clicking against the marble floor. Fabian. Her voice was hoarse, cracking slightly as she spoke. Luna instantly stepped in front of me, her posture rigid, her eyes turning to ice. Wendy Sherman. I thought I made it very clear that you were not welcome in this city. Wendy didn't look at Luna. She kept her eyes fixed on me, tears immediately welling in her eyes. Fabian, please. Wendy whimpered, ignoring the curious glances from the gallery guests around us. I flew 14 hours to get here. I've been searching for this gallery for 3 days. Please talk to me. Just 5 minutes. I looked at her. 6 months ago, the sight of her tears would have made my stomach twist in guilt and panic. I would have rushed to apologize, assuming I had done something wrong, to make her upset. Now looking at her wet hair and pale face, I felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, no lingering pain. Just an overwhelming, quiet detachment, like looking at a photograph of a place I had visited a very long time ago. I gently tapped Luna's shoulder, stepping around her. It's fine, Luna. I'll talk to her. Fabian. Luna began, concerned. I'm okay. I gave Luna a reassuring smile. It won't take long. I walked toward the glass doors leading out to the garden terrace, gesturing for Wendy to follow. The terrace was quiet, surrounded by stone walls covered in climbing ivy, dusted with fresh white snow. The cold air hit my face, crisp and refreshing. Wendy stepped out onto the terrace, shutting the door behind her. She stood 3 feet away from me, her chest heaving as she pulled a small, velvet-lined box from her coat pocket. Fabian, look, Wendy said desperately, opening the box with shaking hands. Inside lay a pristine, vintage roll of Kodak film, the exact same discontinued batch that my mother had left me, in an unopened, original metal casing. I spent 6 months searching international auction sites, Wendy sobbed, holding the box out to me. I bought it from a private collector in Tokyo. It's the exact same one, Fabian. It's unexposed. You can keep it, you can shoot it. You can do whatever you want with it. I looked down at the metal casing resting in the velvet box. Wendy, I said softly, my voice calm and even. My mother's film wasn't valuable because it was old or rare. Wendy paused, her breath catching. It was valuable because my mother held it in her hands before she died. I explained, looking into her bloodshot eyes. You didn't just break a roll of film that day. You showed me that no matter how precious something was to me, it would always be trash to you if it got in Sawyer's way. No, that's not true, Wendy cried, stepping closer, reaching out to grab my hand. I kicked Sawyer out. I haven't spoken to him in 5 months, Fabian. I realized I was wrong. I realized how much I loved you. I pulled my hand back smoothly, stepping out of her reach. You didn't love me, Wendy, I said, my voice steady, unhurried, reflecting the slow rhythm of my heart. You just loved having someone who would always wait for you. You loved feeling like a savior because you stayed with the slow boy your negligence created. Wendy froze, her face turning chalk white. For 16 years, I continued, looking out at the snow falling over the Luznia Plaza. You told me I was too slow. You told me I was a burden. You left me behind at crosswalks and laughed when I burned myself. I looked back at her, my eyes clear and unburdened. I'm not slow anymore, Wendy. I was just walking at a pace that didn't match yours. And now I've crossed my own street. Fabian, please. Wendy dropped to her knees in the snow, clutching the velvet box to her chest, her tears falling onto the cold stone floor. Give me one more chance. I'll move to Luznia. I'll learn French. I'll wait for you. I swear I'll wait for you for the rest of my life. I looked down at her kneeling in the snow. You don't have to wait for me, Wendy, I said softly, because I'm not coming back. I turned around, pushed open the glass door, and stepped back into the warm, bright light of the gallery, leaving her behind in the quiet, falling snow. The exhibition ended at 10 p.m. The last of the guests filtered out into the snow, leaving the gallery quiet and still. Monsieur Laurent helped us turn off the halogen spotlights, locking the heavy oak front doors. Luna walked over to me, handing me my heavy wool coat. She left an hour ago, Luna said quietly. She took a cab back to the airport. I nodded, wrapping my scarf around my neck. Okay. We walked out of the gallery together, our boots crunching softly against the fresh snow on the cobblestone street. The night air was cold and peaceful. The street lamps cast long, golden glows across the plaza, illuminating the gentle dance of snowflakes falling from the dark sky. We reached the crosswalk at the edge of the plaza. The pedestrian light was currently red. In the past, whenever I stood at a red light with Wendy, she would tap her foot impatiently, checking her watch, complaining about how long the timer took, or running across the road before the light even changed, leaving me standing alone on the curb. Luna stood beside me, her hands tucked into her trench coat pockets, standing quietly in the snow, completely at ease. 3 seconds passed. The signal chimed, and the pedestrian light turned a bright, vibrant green. Luna turned to me with a soft, warm smile. Ready, Fabian? I looked at the open street ahead, at the clean white snow waiting for our footprints, and felt a profound, beautiful sense of complete freedom fill my soul. I stepped forward into the crosswalk, walking side by side with my sister, at my own pace, beneath the glowing green light.